Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramon. I'm fired up to have you join us today. Why? We developed this podcast to explore the idea of a servant's heart, how to incorporate that in your work and your life to make an impact and a difference in your world. How would you like to do that every day? I'm blessed. Like today, I've got my incredible guest. I get to serve him today on my podcast. Think about how you can do that every day. Also, too, we bring guests in that will motivate you, inspire you, and educate you in ways of the servant's heart, in ways of helping, supporting, and really helping you grow. My guest will serve you as well. Just thought about that. So that's going to be something I'm going to add. Now, here's your call to action, homework audience. I want you to think about how you're going to serve yourself and others today and what impact you create today. I keep accentuating today because that's the big word here. We're going to talk about leadership and serving, but why wait till next week to serve somebody and bring impact and difference to them? Do it today. And by the way, I guarantee you it's going to feel like Christmas every morning when you do that. Today's episode is sponsored by our incredible sponsor, Pantheon Alliance. Join a community of high-income entrepreneurs and business leaders to create a world-changing thought leader platform to help grow you, but also make the impact and difference in the whole world. Well, as you can see, this whole show is about giving, supporting, and making impact. Well, the impact today is how to be a leader, how to give, but also how to receive. And we're going to talk more about leadership. I want to welcome my guest, McCoug. Is that how we say your last name?
Correct, Steve. Spot on.
You know what? We're doing it on a show. That was a shot in the dark. I'm going, please God. Okay, I got it right. Is that Irish?
Great.
No, that's not Irish. It's probably...
That is Irish. Yep. I had an uncle who did our genealogy and traced us back to County Galway.
Wow. I've got a couple good, really close friends that are Irish, and because I'm Italian-Irish, they tease me all the time. Hey, incorporate your Irish more. And I go, okay, I'll do that.
There you go. I covered it for you.
So leadership is, a part of what you do. You teach it. What is your definition of a servant leader?
So leadership to me is affecting positive change. If you look at some of the definitions, it usually has something to do with affecting change and making people become, followers. Those are all things that have to do with leadership, and they certainly are. But from my perspective, I always like to add that part about positive change, because we don't want to lead people in a negative manner. The carrot and stick analogy. We want people to do the things that we need them to do. We want them to be affecting positive change and making the organization or the business move in the direction that we want it to move in to make things better for everybody else. So that is my definition of leadership, with a little caveat that I always want that change to be positive.
I love it. But the caveat here is the world is so negative. How do we make that change so it's positive in our lives?
From my perspective, I think it's easier to look at our lives on kind of that micro level as opposed to the macro level. And I completely agree with you. There's a lot of negativity in the world. There's a lot of competition in the world. There's a lot of people, suggesting that you have to pick one side or the other, that compromise is somehow a weakness in today's world. And that's really not true. And I see how it's very easy for people to kind of get wrapped up in that and think, no, I'm not going to get ahead if I'm not in competition with others. So the way that I combat that as I said at the beginning, there was I look at my world in micro as opposed to looking at my world in macro. Everyone around me is doing the best they can. Everyone around me is trying to move our organization. In my case, it's a school. In other cases, it might be a business. Everyone is doing their best to try to move us forward and to do the best that we can. So in that instance, I view competition as something that absolutely exists, but people who are doing their best, people who feel their best are doing their best. And doing our best work is how we move forward. So that's the way that I look at it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Again, I'm in a school. I'm not in a business. If I were in a business, maybe this would be a little bit different. That I would have competitors who
Yeah.
I need to outsell and outperform every week. But the only thing you can control is yourself, your performance, those around you, and a good leader will get the best out of those around them.
You are selling parents, and that's probably the hardest sell in the world, I would think. Selling parents on the school, right?
That's true. That's definitely part of it. And I've been doing some work with missions this year, and I can tell you, it really is amazing to see the best and the brightest, and to go through applications and to look at all these scores and say, my goodness, there are a lot of really intelligent, really caring young men and women out there. We're lucky to get them.
Amen. I love that because there are, I'm meeting a lot of them thinking the world's a mess, and it really isn't. It's just meeting the right people that can help change that. Talk about the mission in the school. I'm very excited to hear more before we get into your book, what you're doing with that, what's the goals and missions.
Sure. So at the medical school where I work, I teach leadership studies. That is a course that our fourth year medical students can take right before they go into the match and get ready for residency. And I really like the approach of this course. It's something that I really enjoy teaching because doctors are generally the most highly educated person on the team once they enter into that team setting. But that doesn't mean they're always right. And that's one of the things that we work with our students on, to say that you will be leading a team in the clinical setting someday. You're going to have to work with other doctors. You're going to have to work with specialists. You're going to have to work with nurses. You're going to have to work with respiratory therapists. You're going to have to work with the patient. You're going to have to work with their family. And yes, excuse me, you're the one with the MD after your name. The biggest skill that you're going to bring to that team is taking that advanced knowledge and spreading it out amongst everyone so that everybody can be their best. In addition to all the training you have and all the knowledge you have, it's helping people work in their roles to take the best care of the person in front of you.
Interesting that you teach leadership in a medical school. And I'm going to say this, I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. Healthcare is a mess. It needs help. I've seen stories myself and others. First, I didn't know there's leadership taught to doctors, and that's fantastic. I'm so excited to hear it. But what inroads are you making to make this healthcare better with this leadership teaching?
Yeah, I had a doctor tell me once that medicine is three parts. It is a science, it is practiced as an art, and it's run as a business. And what you have to be careful with is to not outweigh one of those factors to the detriment of the others. That was something that always kind of stuck with me and resonated. This was a surgeon who had a private practice for years. And, he comes right out and says, I obviously learned a lot of science. Had to learn a lot about people because I was working with patients. And the piece they don't tell you about is you have to keep the lights on in your practice. So you do have to make money, but you also have to take care of people, and you got to make sure you're taking care of people first. So yeah, and we try to mimic that with our training of students. So obviously they get a whole lot of science. They learn all of the things that I'll never know anything about, like pharmacology and immunology and what drugs interact with whatever. We also teach them a lot of what we call bedside manner. So this is patient skills, working with people, understanding them, their communication skills. And then really something that I didn't know about until I was in this position is there's a whole other stuff category within medicine. And that's where, things like leadership fall in. health systems factors, humanities, where we're talking about, mistrust of providers, health system factors such as social determinants of health, and things that patients bring to the appointment with them that need to be considered by the physician, because it's not as easy as here's the diagnosis and here is the solution. You have to work with people. If that $5 generic medicine is the difference between putting gas in their tank and getting the medicine, that's a tough decision for people. And to us, we might say, well, we wrote you the prescription for the generic. It's only $5. We don't always think about that.
Oh my God, you're blowing my mind right now. I need to start a clinic or a school and have you teach every doctor. And I know when you teach, it doesn't resonate with, and this is not medical, it's across the board. I mean, I have college students that got marketing degrees, know nothing about marketing because they went somewhere else. Are you making an impact, do you think, with doctors with this leadership training?
I hope so.
Okay. No, that's very honest.
A lot of my former students, were really excited about the book that I just wrote, and a lot of them have picked it up and said, when can I swing by your office and get it signed? Actually, 2 of them even contributed stories to the book. I have a longitudinal research project I'm doing with another student. So there's definitely the interest. We have a lot of students who come in and they realize that they're smart and they know their stuff, and they'll learn all the science and they'll learn all the things that it takes to be a doctor, but they want that little bit more. And oftentimes that little bit more is, narrative. That's what life is all about. We are the stories that we tell. We are the stories that we understand about ourselves.
And I don't know if you know this, but you're giving hope to the healthcare industry. That's powerful, because this is the bedside manner thing. If they just fix is not the right word, be better at that with leadership tied to it, and the generic drug story you told, it would solve a lot of problems, because that's the biggest thing I hear. I mean, my wife's dealing with their dad, and the nurse couldn't even barely speak English. They couldn't understand him. Plus, he's deaf, and she's talking to him normally. And on the board, I don't want to get into all that, but I'm so excited. Audience, hope you are. This guy's going to be a game changer. I'm saying that right now. Let's dive into the book. What's the book about? Name of the book, and what was the goals and missions?
Sure. The name of the book is Leadership Bites. And the story behind the title is that they are small bites. They are short stories that go along with leadership theories. The subtitle is An Approachable Handbook for Emerging Leaders. So it really is a handbook, because it goes through leadership theory from the 1880s all the way up to the most recent one I have in the book is from 2024. But what's different is every theory is partnered with a short story. Sometimes those short stories are from education or sports or art or psychology. Sometimes it's something that I went through that I'm comfortable sharing. Sometimes it is from contributors. Like I said, I have 2 students who kind of told their story in the book that lined up really well with some of the theories that we talked about. So that's kind of been the approach, and that's how I wanted it to be different. It is a leadership book, no doubt. I've laughed as I've seen the different outlets try to categorize it. Some have said it's a business book, some have said it's a self-help book, some have said it's a short story book, and honestly, it's a little bit of all. So it's one of those books, excuse me. It's one of those books that I want people to pick up that are interested in leadership. But even if you're not interested in leadership, you can just pick it up and read a great story about a chimpanzee that was raised as if she were a child, or a story about baseball cards and what they meant to a man, and how that ties to a leadership theory that we're talking about.
This is great. Now I can't wait to get the book. He just sold me, audience. I hope he sold you. I read the book. Let's just use me as an example, or anybody listening. What's the benefits I'm going to receive? ROI is always the big word from the book while I'm reading it and after I've read it, finished it.
Well, and if I did it correctly, there are 2 ROIs. So one is the leadership theories. So if you're in a position where you're leading an organization, you're leading a business, you're leading a team, you're leading anything, I'm hoping that this book will kind of give you a beginning to end notion of how theories have changed over the time. And, no spoilers here, but we start with trait theories that aren't great. We start with things that say, well, you're either born with it or you're not. And then we kind of move a little bit in the area of like behaviorism. So, kind of borrowing from psychology, these are the behaviors of good leaders. People tend to have them or not have them, but that doesn't mean that you can't refine your strengths, minimize your weaknesses if you're aware of those things. And ultimately, where we get to is these resonant ideas, these ideas that what you put out to your team and to your organization is exactly what they're going to receive. So you better hope it's positive, because if it's negative, they're going to receive it as negativity. And then the other return on investment is I just hope you get some good stories. A lot of people have said, who were you thinking about when you wrote this book? And that's one of the really easy questions. And it's everything I've read by Malcolm Gladwell is kind of what I was thinking about. And a friend actually turned me on to Revenge of the Tipping Point. I'm listening to that as I'm driving back and forth to work. And I think about how Malcolm Gladwell, I'm thinking about how Malcolm Gladwell tells you a story. And then at the end, you realize, oh man, he's talking about, some business strategy or, leadership, when really he just talked to you about ketchup for 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden it kind of all clicks together in your brain. So those are the two things that I hope people take from it. If you're interested in leadership, it's a lot better than some of the dry textbook style books you could pick up. And even if you're not, hope you read through it and say, man, I'm never going to forget that story about whatever it was.
You're my new best friend. I love Malcolm Gladwell for exactly the reasons you said. And the outlier, I use that all the time with people, being an outlier, being different. The blue zones. I think that's, in this book you haven't written in here, is he talks about. I love that. So I see why you're so good and successful. You're following a great lead there. So this book, you teach medical humanities and all that and leadership, but this is for any industry, any business, correct?
Yeah, it's for anybody. Some of the stories are similar to what we teach. A lot of them are about medicine and about the medical industry, just because it's something that I kind of deal with pretty routinely. The stories that students tell oftentimes are about how they made their way to training. So there is a bit of a medical bend to it, I would say. But honestly, there's just as much of a sports bend to it, because off the top of my head, I have a story about an Olympian. I have a story about a racehorse. I have a story about a basketball player that you might pick it up and be like, oh, okay, there's a lot of sports metaphors here. There's a lot of sports stories. Then 3 stories later, you might say, now, wait a minute. Now I just read some about medicine. Wait, there's about 6 or 7 stories that say, something about psychology. So yeah, it definitely has its themes, and I guess it's kind of interesting for the reader to those up as they go along.
Comes to my head right away is bedside manner is just not with medical. What's your bedside manner as a CEO of a marketing company? What's your bedside manner as an entrepreneur, as an insurance agent? Bedside manner is how do you treat people? That it's just another way of treat. I'm falling in love with your book. I'm just going to be very honest with you, because those are the simple things we can change, and anybody can do it to be very successful.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of ethics in medicine. How does that transpire into, or does it transfer, not transpire? Transpire sounds like medical term. Transfer, even hosts can make mistakes. Transfer to regular, because I know there is. Everybody's got their ethics, financial, medical, leadership, all that. How do you see that play?
Yeah, go back to that metaphor about medicine being a science, practices an art, and also having to be translated to a business model. It's easy to get greedy in any environment where you start making money if your mindset becomes, well, how do I do better? How do I make more? It's human nature. We want to be comfortable, and financial security gives us that comfortability. But part of it is remembering what the mission is and what you're there for. So as a physician, I hope that they're there to take care of people. As a business or as a nonprofit or, anything, I hope you're there to help people, to give people a good living so that they can live comfortably, but to also provide a service or a product that makes people's lives better.
Yeah.
So greed is one of those things that can creep in if you're not careful. Same thing with ego, same thing with that want for power. Um, and one of the stories in the book actually talk about how we move from like a trainee, and then we get kind of comfortable with our job, and then we almost like self-actualize a little bit in our careers because we've done it so much. It becomes one of those things that what used to take me 8 hours when I first started in my position now only takes me an hour. And then I have to not feel guilty about that, to say, well, yeah, I did this work today, and now I'm going to go take a break. Really, that would have taken me 8 hours 6 months ago. So you've trained your brain, you've kind of worked your way up. And I think that's the notion of climbing the ladder. So it's not for everybody. And my fear is that we get so obsessed with that next promotion and that next job that we lose sight of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and who we're doing it for. So that's one of the things that I think we really have to be very open and honest and reflective with ourselves. One of the early reviews I got for the book, I mean, it was great. I was really happy the reviewer picked up on it. Was pretty much what I had just said of, we're told you have to always do better and always do better and have to climb the ladder and have to get, as far as you can. But we miss that notion of stepping back and saying, is this right for me? Is it right for me at this time in my career? Is it right for me in this time in my personal life? And those are all factors that people need to factor in when they're making a decision.
Yeah, and indecisiveness is a killer for anybody. Make a decision, wrong or right, we can always pivot from it, change and move. This is a selfish question. Audience, sorry, I'm the host, so I can do what I want. Just kidding. Why do they call it practice medicine? I'm always curious why that phrase comes up. I'm practicing medicine. Do you know where
That
it
is
came from?
true, because you practice medicine, you practice law. I was always told
Yeah.
your professional occupations are medicine, law, and education, but I would never say I practice education. I'm sure that's some kind of archaic term that goes back to somewhere. Because I immediately, when you said that, I thought, yeah, you practice medicine and you practice law. And now, as like the entomology person of myself, if I were writing about that topic, I would immediately go to Google and find out why. So maybe that's more homework for your listeners. Find
There
out
you
why
go.
we practice medicine and practice law, but everybody else does their job.
We'll make it a reward. Anybody emails me with the answer, I'll get you something. I'll take care of you. And the other thing is, when I hear practice medicine, I don't want my heart surgeon to practice on my heart. I want him to do surgery. I was just curious to me. It's not a bad thing. I just curious, and you gave me a better answer I've ever heard. So that's great.
Semantics in some way, I'm sure.
Yeah. Since medicine is, your big part of it, and leadership, and I love what you do. I do have some people that are in medicine or want to be in medicine. What's the tip you would give them to really decide if they should get into medicine or not?
It really comes down to, and I'll actually use the name of your podcast. So that was a great question, Steve. You led me right into it. Do you have that servant's heart? That really is what it's all about. A lot of smart people apply to medical school. But really, what makes people stand out to me when I'm reading their essays, or considering them as good candidates for our school, is what are the extra things that I'm seeing? And those extra things often are where you went out of your way to take care of someone, to be considerate of someone else's needs. And oftentimes it's just community service. I do a crisis text line. I go to a soup kitchen, things like that. But then we have a lot of students, and it's great to see this from, I'm going to say young people because they're younger than me. I don't want to say kids. Most of our medical students are in their 20s or their early 30s, who take that notion and go, a huge leap forward of saying, there are communities not far from me that need a lot of help. So I immerse myself in that community. and this education that I'm getting and these skills that I'm going to gain at your school, I want to take back home to make that community a better place. Or even if it's not home, to say, I want to practice family medicine. I want to practice internal medicine. I want to practice pediatrics. And my focus is going to be on vulnerable populations and people who need the most help. And that's amazing. To say that I want to go into this really difficult profession for starters, and then to say I want to use it to do as much good in the world as I can. Those are the young people that we want every time.
Game changer, Ian. That is a huge game changer. Audience, if you know somebody who wants to get in medicine, share that last 5 minutes. Seriously, share that out. And if they can answer yes to that, or we'll get Ian's contact info and they can reach out to Ian. He'd be a great contact to ask that question if you have questions. We're at the end here, and it went fast as I knew it would, because I could tell you're so passionate about what you do. People with passion, these podcasts just fly through. Let's end with a fun question I always ask my guests. So I've reserved a table at a restaurant for you, table of 4. You're going to sit in one of the chairs. The other 3 empty chairs, who would you invite, dead or alive? Why are they coming to the table? And what food would you order?
Hey, that's a tough one. I've thought about this before. My brother-in-law actually does this and says, you have to do an alive group and a not alive group. So that's always really tough. So Malcolm Gladwell, we already mentioned. So I'm going to go with Malcolm Gladwell. I'm going to go with Richard Powers. We're going to do another author. Richard Powers is a novelist who just blows my mind with every book that he puts out. So those are good. I feel like I would have to have a sports guy, but it's hard. I'm a big Mets fan. I've been a Mets fan my whole life. So no offense to anybody who's not a Mets fan. Please still go out and buy my book.
I love that disclaimer.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want to say Tom Seaver or Mike Piazza or one of those guys. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Well, let's do the Tom Seaver and Mike Piazza. We add an extra chair. It's your table. You do what the hell you want with it. It's your table. Bring it. So what are we eating at? Because I have to bring a 5th chair. You bring Malcolm Gladwell. I'm coming. So what are we eating at the table?
I feel like the crowd pleaser is always pizza. So you just get a couple pizzas, you get a couple sodas. If anybody wants to get a beer, more power to them. It's funny. At the end of every semester, we have a feedback party for our groups. So a lot of the groups I teach are small groups, 7, 8, 9 students. And I always tell them, like, I'll bring pizza. You guys bring whatever else it is that you want. And we just sit around the table and just talk about how the semester went. And everybody gives everybody feedback. It's another story, actually, that's in the book. So that ties in really well. And I always say that, so what you need for community is pizza. So that's why I would go with that. And what I love about the experience, and again, no spoilers for the story, but I guess it is kind of a spoiler, is the students come up with the idea of doing a Secret Santa. So now they pull names and they give feedback and they give presents while we commune over pizza. So Steve, it would be me, you, Malcolm Gladwell, Richard Powers. They can have their like nerdy section of the table that we could float over to, and Mike Piazza, Tom Seaver. Mike Piazza would probably appreciate the pizza. He lives in Italy most of the year. He could bring it.
There you go. And I want to ask him why he threw the bat at Roger Clemens. That would be my first. So you can tell him I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. So we're kind of connected when we left and we gave you the Mets. So I gave you the Mets. That's not what I meant.
No, you gave us the Mets. That's true.
Yeah, it probably is. But, we're tied somehow. Ian, I got to thank you. You come into these podcasts as a host and learn about somebody, read through them. But you're a real blessing because the healthcare industry needs more people like you. And I hope you guys go out and read, grab the book. Where can they grab the book? They want to buy it?
So any number of places. If you want to keep up with me, my website is really easy. It's just my name. It's ianmccoog.com. My publisher is Rootstock Publishing in Montpelier, Vermont. Absolutely fantastic people there. You can go to Rootstock's website. However, it's also available everywhere else. So you can get it at Amazon, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. If you go to your local bookstore, it is somewhere in the magical database and they can get you a copy.
Now, does the website have a place they can reach out to you in case they have a question about medicine or anything?
Absolutely. Again, website is just my name, ianmccoog.com. I have some contact information on there. I'm happy to chat with anybody.
See, an educator knows how to make it simple so we can learn and not have to keep asking many questions. I love that about you. Thank you again, Ian. I appreciate it. Audience, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And here's why. You're listening to this and you have a friend that wants to get in medicine or is in medicine. That's another one. I mean, there's so many departments of medicine, you know, pediatric and heart and all the cardiac, all that. Or you've got a doctor that might want to meet Ian that you're working with. Here's the gift. It's a true gift. Share this podcast with them. Go, hey, I've just listened to Ian. Oh my God, he's got some great ideas. Incredible book. Listen to it. And they listen to it and they reach out to Ian. He helps them out. Or maybe he goes to they sign up for their school or whatever. But this connection is truly a gift. We're not doing enough gifts in the world. Ian's gift is he's helping doctors with leadership. To me, one of the best gifts I've ever heard. Why don't you do the same thing, make an impact and difference in your world and the people that you know? Also comment on the YouTube channel. If it's for Ian, I'll make sure he gets that. And if it's for the podcast critique, go ahead and do that. The better I make the podcast, the better it's for you, and my guests can stand out like Ian. So with that all being said, me and Ian want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you all on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.